GT3 racing is widely considered one of the most successful categories in motorsport. Just last year, the LM GT3 class made its debut at Le Mans, and earlier this year, GT3 cars took centre stage at Goodwood. And it's for this reason we've come to take a closer look at two of the cars that helped shape the early years of the category: the Morgan Aero Super Sport and the Aston Martin DBRS9. Let's go check them out. Will, good to see you again.
Oh, it's good to see you too. Thanks for coming.
We're in the presence of two incredible GT3 cars, and GT3 as a category seems to be having a real moment. What do you think is behind this rise in popularity?
Listen, I think one of the key things for it is the cars. You know, these are very exciting, fast cars, but also so accessible. Yeah. It's the reason why GT3 came about, and I think it allows people, particularly privateer teams and gentleman drivers, to race at very fast, exciting racing, but at a fraction of the cost of GT1. Yeah. You know, cheaper to buy into, cheaper to run, and you know, the hours you get on the components of these cars gives you incredibly good bang for buck, for want of a better expression, in racing.
When I think of GT3 cars, I immediately think of Ferraris, Astons, Porsches. I don't necessarily think of Morgan, and yet here we are next to one of the coolest GT3 cars I've ever seen, and it's wearing a Morgan badge. What is the story behind this car?
This is a very rare car. The Auto GT French team, run by Jacques Lafitte, built two cars effectively. They'd run a couple of cars the year before, based on the Aero 8.
Right.
And then over the winter of the 2008 into the 2009 series, and Jacques Lafitte drove that year. Okay. He continued to run the team. They basically probably kept a lot of the chassis design, but then stripped the car and started again. Yeah. And then you end up with a Super Sport. What's great, you're running obviously the Hollinger 6-speed gearbox, which seems to be the gearbox, for want of a better expression.
And that's the sequential gearbox.
Yeah, sequential gearbox. Yeah. Actually, both of these cars run that. Okay. But the BMW engine as well. So you're getting about 600 brake horsepower. But I think what stands out about this particular car is just the looks. Yeah. You know, I just think it's great. You know, you've still got the wooden dash in there. It's got it's just an amazing, mean-looking low lines to the Morgan. Yeah. Which I feel, you know, I'm not an expert on the Morgan road cars, but I feel there'll be people who know more about it, but the Morgan came up with some really wild roads. They were in a great point of design, I think, at this time. Yeah. You know, some really sleek, wild-looking designs.
And how did this car actually fare in competition? Was it competitive?
Well, yeah. Well, they did two cars. It started the season very well. This car and its sister car won a round each of the first round of the European Championship in GT3 Championship at Silverstone. Okay. And continued to fare well throughout the season.
And I suppose, why did Morgan build the car for GT3 as opposed to like GT1, for example? What was it about GT3 racing that made it make sense?
I would have thought it would have been more driven by the team. You know, at the time this was happening, GT1 grids, you know, you saw it with the bringing in of GT2, GT2 AM and GTE, went on to. The bigger grids were the GT1 grids were getting expensive and starting to shrink. GT3 made an awful lot more sense. Yeah. You know, they're a lot less money to run, much more accessible for these teams. And it was, you know, it was growing. I mean, it was 36 cars running in 2010, I think, you know, I was looking at the other day. So I think it was just it was a growing competitive series. So for a manufacturer, it would make sense. Yeah. But you know, I would have thought it was more a combination of the sponsors, the team, and using Morgan because it's wild and it gave them a chance to do something a little different. Yeah. You know. Yeah.
Next to it, we have this equally stunning DBRS9. Tell us a little bit about this car.
Yes, impressive-looking car, isn't it? This car is obviously, you know, like with this, again, the Aston's very rare. This is chassis number 22 of the 26 cars built by ProDrive. Right. And this was run by the Hexis team, French team again, for the 2010 FIA GT and 2011 FIA GT3 Championship. They were already championship winners from the year before. They had some great results, win at Silverstone, had 3 podiums, and then carried on racing in GT3 the following year. Right. And the car really raced on at front level until 2015.
Okay, and it's sort of a baby or a detuned DBR9. Is that kind of a good way to look at this car?
I think that's probably, I'd say that probably is it is the GT3 version of the DBR9.
Of the DBR9, yeah.
And I think you got all the experience of pro drive in there. This particular car, being a later car, is probably one of the ultimate specs.
Right.
So. Okay. This has the G spec engine, which is the ultimate spec engine, most powerful. It's got, I think, knocking out around about 600 brake. They're both similar horsepower. You've got, again, the Hollinger 6-speed gearbox. This, I believe, is the only one, or one of the only few, to have ABS fitted.
Okay.
So, and again, when you start delving into this, and the great, you look through all the reams of pro drive paperwork in the different specs, a lot of the components on this are the endurance spec.
Right, okay.
And the difference there, and the reason that is good, a prime example is the crown wheel and pinion. Standard one has 1,500 kilometers service time on it, whereas the endurance has 6,000. So, endurance drive shafts, wherever it's, there's a spec difference, it was the ultimate spec.
Yeah. And I think as well, the DBRS9 was one of the first to be homologated for GT3, and so it really helped the popularity of the actual category. When you see these kind of cars on the grid, there's no surprise that GT3, became such a popular category, when you're running cars like this.
Yeah, and I think for a team like ProDrive to be able to build and sell, to build 26, there was clearly a demand, because that's a much more bespoke. I mean, there's a lot of Audis out there, there's a lot of Porsches out there, there's a lot of BMWs out there, but these are rare, and obviously, these only being two. But I think what is key as well is that components are, you can look at these and you can think, oh my God, that must be so bespoke. What happens with the parts? But APD brakes, BMW engine, both running Hollinger gearboxes. The parts are. They're not as crazy as you think, and I think that particularly with ProDrive, you look at it, the technology is still there. The guys who ran them all in period are the top guys running them now.
They're still around.
They're still around. They're still running the cars. They've just rebuilt the gearbox on this. Right, 0 hours on the gearbox. So the same guys. Some great skills out there. And the parts are accessible.
So if someone actually picked up one of these cars, what can they actually do with them?
Thankfully, a great deal, which is good. First and foremost, you've got Motor Racing Legends' new GT3 series, which is really exciting, and is clearly gaining great traction, which is great. I went to the round at Donington the other day, and the grids are full. They've got great grids. It's exciting racing. It, again, leans back to the accessibility of the cars. People are coming from running in GT1 and other series. And they've all got, if you look at the names with the cars, they've all got one of these. They're buying into them because it's great racing. As an organisation, they're really putting a lot behind it, and it's exciting. Motor Racing Legends is now entering a new chapter, which is, I've always been a fan with racing there with 50 sports cars. When I was racing 50 sports cars, they've kept that, and it's exciting to see another accessible modern motorsport, as we've seen with LMP1 cars and stuff running. Both with Masters and with Endurance Racing Legends. So, that's really gaining traction. There's more rounds of that to come. You've got, this car certainly has run with Peter Auto and Endurance Racing Legends a couple of times, probably by invitation. And you can run the cars on track. The cars, historically, people have been running cars like this. There's a great, exciting opportunity just to put some track time in too.
And you get invites to Goodwood.
You do, you do. This was doing the GT3 demonstration, which was great to see all those cars out there.
And I suppose the introduction of the LM GT3 class at Le Mans as well, which came in last year to replace GTE, that can only be good news as well for even the older GT3 cars in terms of provenance, collectability, just showing that GT3 is on the rise.
I agree, 100%. I think always when there's a contemporary version of any series still going, it makes it relevant. And I think the reason why GT3's come back and has come to Le Mans is the same ethos and reason why it came in the first place, and why it's come back to why it's been chosen and come back to historics and running there.
Yeah.
So I think it only helps bolster everything. Yeah.
I suppose the most important question though is which one would you have?
You go again with your McQueen and Newman question. I think it's a good question. They're both great cars. They're both rare and special. I think from a the Aston is a stunning car, and if you look at the DBR9, it's iconic. If you go to GT1, it really is
the pinnacle.
It's pro drive. It's the pinnacle up, and the market has shown that as well. This is the GT3 version of that. With that leading its place in the market, the DBR9 and sort of higher echelons, one thinks you have to see the Aston Martin being up there as well. It's rare, they're special, that V12 engine. It's pro drive, it looks fantastic. And, and they were championship winners. It's a proven front-running car. So, it's hard to argue why you wouldn't have the Aston. So I suppose it's more of a head and the heart conversation because, there's that argument there, but that is cool. That is, and it's not just wild looking and cool, it also is a very fast competitive car as well. And I think that, both have got their rarity. You're always going to stand out in the Aston Martin because everybody loves that look. But, you're not going to bump into another one of these on the grid.
Exactly.
And that's pretty wild.
You want to be the Indy kid on the grid, you've got to have one of those. But they're both just incredible.
Exactly.
Well, Will, thank you so much for showing us around them. Really
good to see you as always.
Yeah.
Always welcome. Thanks. Nice to have a chance to chat about GT3 at this point, really, where it's exciting. I'm really glad it's back and it's these cars are getting used because they're special cars. And what is exciting as well is a lot of these cars are coming from the teams, so they're pure, which is exciting.
A huge thank you to Will for showing us around those incredible cars. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like and subscribe button and leave a comment down below. Both of them are also currently for sale with William Anson and available to view on Custodian, so make sure to check them out. And make sure to check out Custodian as well for all your car-related needs, whether that's insurance, you're looking to buy a new car, or you're just looking to manage the ownership of your current cars. I'll leave all the links down below in the description. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.